So it's one thing to be sitting in your bedroom, sitting on a bench, practicing. And it's another thing to have freaking bullets flying over your head and smoke grenades going off and people screaming at you and water being sprayed in your face and remaining calm. But it's entirely possible, because what you realize when you do the practices of meditation, concentration, box breathing, is that you truly actually have zero control over anything that happens outside your own skin. But you have total control over everything that happens inside your skin. So that's the first kind of insight from mental toughness is don't try to control, just expect that you're going to, things are going to be out of control out there. So you can control what's going on in here in spite of what's going on out there.
Meet my guest, Mark Devine. Mark is a renowned former Navy SEAL commander, serial entrepreneur, and New York Times bestselling author. He is undoubtedly one of the most badass all-around warriors living today. A self-described warrior monk, Mark is a master of human performance, both mental and physical. All right. Well, Mark, this is such an honor. I've been actually wanting to get you on for some time. Actually, your sponsored ad always comes up in my Instagram feed for Unbeatable Mind. And I'm like, I need to get this guy on my podcast. So this is just such an honor. I want to really thank you for coming on.
Yeah. Thank you for having me, Erica. It's an honor here too.
Thank you. Well, first, of course, I want to acknowledge your service. So I want to thank you for serving our country. That is first and foremost. Mm-hmm. Second, I really want to acknowledge that you are dedicated to helping the high suicide rate of military veterans with your foundation, the Courage Foundation. So I just want to really thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you. That's important work. It's crazy, isn't it? 22 veterans a day on average are committing suicide.
Is that still the number? Because I know that's been a quoted number for a while.
Yeah, but you never know. But it's not just recent, Iraqi and Afghanistan. I think that's a worldwide average, or at least wherever they keep the statistics. But it's all vets. It's not just like recent war vets. But still, it's an appalling statistic. Suicide in general is appalling. Yes. And it's going up, right? As a result of COVID. That's like one of the unintended consequences of the economic shutdown. And the vets are particularly hit hard as well.
Yeah, and probably even more so now because they can't possibly be with family members or their brothers, sisters, whatever it may be. I'm curious, so if you could tell, actually, since we're starting here, about your foundation, can you tell us a little synopsis about your foundation, what you're actually doing with it?
Yeah. Well, targeting those vets that are most at risk, which, by the way, is not easy to do, right? So we've got a lot of partners who work with vets, both VA and also nonprofits, and we ask them to send us the hard case scenario, people who are really suffering. And what we've done is taken my Unbeatable Mind program, and we've certified the military coaches that we have to be able to provide really distinct transformational training to the vets, coupled with 18 months of hands-on coaching. And also they get put into a team again. So they feel that sense of team. They've got a swim buddy, that they can reach out to, or reach out to them practically every day. So they've got that accountability and kind of pick me up. And then we give them training through a 3-day immersion, using the Unbeatable Mind kind of vertical development or character development model, which is integrated training. So it's physical. So we get them back on a physical training program, and immediately they start feeling better and losing weight, and get them on nutrition planning, all that kind of stuff. And then it's also the mental tools of Unbeatable Mind. So we get them into breath work and imagery, and have them create a more positive image of their future, and to visualize it daily, and meditation, those types of things. But also, most important, the emotional work. So we work on what we call the 5 mountains: physical, mental, emotional, intuitional, and spiritual. And so we have training and tools for them to work on all those 5 every week. And then they're held accountable by their boat crew and their coach.
That's great.
It's an amazing program. It's not cheap for us to run. It's all free for the vets. So we obviously we raise money to either fund a veteran or a cohort. Each cohort is about 12 to 14 vets that we put through. Wow. But we're 3 years into this, and so it's pretty early in the game. The results have been pretty extraordinary in terms of the impact on the vets. So
that's
it's
amazing.
An important mission. I wish we could serve more people, though. It's like
absolutely.
One at a time.
Well, I would be more than happy to tag this in the show notes. Of course, everybody go check this foundation out, the Courage Foundation. Mark Devine has obviously founded this foundation, and he's very passionate, as you could tell. And it's something that needs to be recognized and needs really serious help. And like you said, it's free for the vets, so there needs to be funding.
That's right. Yeah. It's couragefoundation.net. There is a .org out there, but it's not us. It's something else.
Okay, perfect. Well, how would I just start and kind of give people a little snippet of all you've accomplished? Actually, this is probably like the smallest little bit, but I'll just name off some things. And since it's quite a bit, I'm going to read it. So you're a New York Times bestseller. You've written 5 books. Your most recent book was released not that long ago. Am I correct?
A week before the lockdown. So it got kind of buried in the news cycle.
Well, there's no better time for people to be reading. So it's definitely, you have 5 books under your belt, New York Times bestseller, ranked #1 trainee in SEALs Buds class number 170, which is quite a high ranking to say the least. You served 9 years active duty, 11 years as a reserve SEAL, retiring as a commander in 2011, founded NavySeals.com, the leading website for gear and information about SEALs, founder of Warrior Yoga, founder of SEALFit, a fitness program promoting both mental and physical toughness training, and you started the Unbeatable Mind program, which is helping forge mental toughness for business leaders, your everyday person, to just become like literally like unstoppable. And then you founded the Courage Foundation. So that's pretty darn unbelievable, to say the least. But what I would love if you could start off by just talking about, you didn't become a SEAL the most traditional route. If anything, nothing close, right? Far from the battlefield. So I would love if you could kind of share your untraditional path of how that even came about, which is really fascinating. And I can't wait for people to hear your story.
Yeah, most people do not take the route that I took because, drum roll, I was a certified public accountant. Yay. Before I was a Navy SEAL. Imagine that.
So crazy.
Imagine that. So I was, I'm from upstate New York, and I went to Colgate University, a small liberal arts school in upstate New York. And I was kind of groomed to go into business. My family had one of those family businesses that's been around for over 100 years. And everyone has gone into the family business. In fact, all my siblings to this day work there. So that was pretty much my programming. Colgate really didn't change that, although I would admit that a semester over in England or London and Europe, traveling Europe, really did open my mind quite a bit. You know how travel and spending time in another culture can really, really be such a growth catalyst. And that was my first experience of that. So I came back from that my junior year thinking, wow, maybe I can do more than just go back to the family business. And so I took a look around and what everyone else was, jobs that they were looking into. And of course, started that whole interview process, and I landed a job with Coopers & Lybrand, which is now PricewaterhouseCoopers, which pretty much stunned me because most of my peers were like 4.0 students getting those jobs. And I was like a solid 2.8, very average student. I was super smart. I just had no idea how to study. I went to this podunk hick high school where the biggest club there, and this is no ding to farmers, but it was Future Farmers of America. And I was definitely not going to be a future farmer of America, at least not at a commercial level. So yeah, I got this job. I went down to New York. They sent me to NYU, Stern School of Business, which is a great business school, to get a master's in accounting, which I really didn't care about. I had no interest in it. I actually had no interest in the job of auditing, which is what I got hired for. But Erica, you can imagine coming out of a small liberal arts school to go to Manhattan to work for one of this top accounting and consulting firm to get all this diverse experience. And they're going to send me to NYU. And I figured I could just transfer into the MBA program to get a MBA in finance, which is what I did. So I spent 4 years, became a certified public accountant. I was an auditor and then a consultant. I got my MBA in finance. Now, that's not what you asked me about though, but that's kind of what I did. So
Yeah.
the unique part about this story, and I'll try to make it a little shorter than it already is going, is that I stumbled into a martial arts studio because I was looking for something, a very physical guy growing up. I was kind of an elite athlete at a young age. And I was looking for a martial art because I had a freshman roommate. I watched him really transform himself through karate. And I was like, that was kind of interesting to me. And so I was walking home one night and I found this martial arts studio on 23rd Street, which is like 2 or 3 blocks from where I was living. And I walked inside and I was just blown away by the energy I felt and also by the presence of the guy who founded it, the Grandmaster. His name was Nakamura. It turns out that Nakamura is a Zen master, and he was teaching Zen through this martial art that he had founded called Seido, S-E-I-D-O. I signed up immediately, and I really, really took to the Zen for some reason, because I probably grew up deep in upstate New York, where I spent a lot of time outside in the wilderness, and I was very comfortable with that kind of stillness and that feeling of, that I would get after long hikes and just sitting and looking at the Adirondack range and just, I really appreciated that silence. And so I started practicing Zen meditation at 21. And of course, I've never stopped, right? And so that's been an extraordinarily important part of my life. The Zen meditation began to chip away at my storyline and also all the emotional barriers that I had put up from a pretty hectic and abusive childhood. And I began to get these really wild insights when I was in, the long sit. So it didn't happen right away, but after about 9 months to a year, when my mind could stabilize, they say that kind of calming the monkey mind, when I was able to calm my monkey mind and sit in just like true silence, which was devoid of thought most of the time, not entirely, but most of the chatter, then I started to get these insights. And it came in the form of like imagery, as well as just a sense of knowing something that I didn't know I knew, or I didn't have any reason to know. And what it was pointing me toward was that this story that I was groomed to be a business guy and to go back and be in the family business, or even to be on Wall Street, was just flawed. And then it was not the right thing for me to do. And that if I did it, I'd be really, really missing my calling. I'd be off, on the wrong Dharma boat. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And so I started to pay attention to that. And I started the journal, which I'd never done before. I started journaling because I was like, there's so much richness here. I got to start asking better questions. So the journaling led me to ask better questions, really simple stuff, because I was 22 or 23 at the time. If not this, then what, right? Then what? What am I supposed to be doing? And I would sit with that question, and I would get different imagery and sensations. And what was coming up for me was warrior, capital W, warrior. Like I'm a warrior. I'm meant to be a warrior. If reincarnation is true, which I believe it is, then I've been a warrior for lifetimes. And this is an important one. Like this lifetime is important. I must go be a warrior again. I didn't say go be a Navy SEAL or anything like that, and I could have been a warrior at the family business, to be fair, but that wasn't something I was passionate about. So net for this long story is that I ended up pursuing that, both mentally and with imagery, and finally took action when I stumbled across a Navy recruiting office, and I saw a poster that said, "Be someone special" across the top of it, and had imagery of Navy SEALs doing kick-ass Navy SEAL stuff on it. And right there, I was like smitten. I was like, that's it. That's what I'm supposed to be. That's the kind of warrior that I'm supposed to be. So I pursued that. I was one of 2 people to get selected to go to officer candidate school that year, with a follow-on commitment to go to SEAL training. I showed up at SEAL training in class 170, like you said, in 1990, and I felt like I was home, right? I had been there before. Part of that was my deep visualization practice, and part of it was just a sense, probably had already met all the requirements, you know what I mean? Either in my past life or just because my father beating the shit out of me made it pretty easy, right? There wasn't anything that they could do for me. So I graduated number 1 in my class and never looked back. That was a long, long story. Sorry about that.
No, That's okay, because there's so much richness in that. And I mean, if I could just pull out one thing right now, the meditation practice, because this literally changed the trajectory of your life.
Yeah.
To my understanding, this obviously you wouldn't have had this realization, these downloads, if you weren't sitting in that
Unquestionably
silence.
not. I can guarantee
So
you if I
crazy.
hadn't started the meditation practice and stuck with it and trusted it, and also had some skillful teaching of it, right? Because a lot of people are frustrated with meditation because they don't know how to do it. And so they just sit and think and flail and they get frustrated. Well, I had some skillful teacher because Nakamura was a Zen master, and we used to go, a small group of us with Nakamura, we used to go to the Zen Mountain Monastery twice a year for these longer weekends, 4 to 5 day weekend sits with the Zen monks and the head, master. So we got trained directly from the Zen monks. And I practice every single day since then for a minimum of 20 minutes every morning.
Can you share what type of meditation it is? Because there's so many different forms. So I'm curious the one that worked for you.
Yeah, and I think that's probably the problem, Erica, is like meditation is kind of like a word like leadership. It's so broad and it means so many different things to different people. So I don't usually use that term meditation, even in my my Unbeatable Mind training. So I'd break it down into like what we're doing. So for me, first, it includes a breath practice that I call box breathing. And breath practice is traditionally, like in the yoga world, it precedes meditation, both in a session and also in preparation for meditation. And the reason that's important is because most people are physiologically, energetically out of balance. And when they sit down to meditate, they can't concentrate. They're uncomfortable. Their body is not ready to sit for long periods of time. They shouldn't even be sitting. Maybe they should be standing or laying down. And so they're distracted by the discomfort. They're distracted by the imbalance. They're distracted by the stress that is built up over their life. So first, we must de-stress our body, brain, and mind, so that we can sit comfortably and get our brain into an alpha state really, really quickly. Otherwise, it just won't happen, right? It's really different. So part of it's biology, and part of it is the psychology, right? So box breathing, which is our practice, affects both the biology of your brain as well as your content, the psychology, because it's going to settle your brain. It's going to bring a sense of clarity. It'll slow down the frequency of the thoughts that, arise. The constant, they say 60,000 thoughts you have every day, and 80% of the same ones you had yesterday. So box breathing is the antidote to that. So that's the first step. The second step is to use the box or some other object of concentration to develop concentration. So we call that obviously concentration practice. This has a few different benefits. One is we're learning to focus on one thing to the exclusion of all else, which is very useful for leaders or warriors. And we're also developing the capacity to shift our attention if we want to change the object of concentration, or if we've suddenly drifted off, or split our attention to bring it back really quickly. And so this is both attention control, focusing skills, and concentration training. So those are the three benefits of that. And this is built on top of breath control, which has de-stressed the body and gotten your brain into the appropriate brainwave state for meditation. Then the third skill, Erica, is mindful awareness, which is similar to mindfulness, but mindful awareness is when you develop the metacognitive skill, almost like partitioning your brain to be able to think about your thinking. And I mean the quality of your thinking and the energetic nature of the thoughts that you have. Is it positive? Is it negative? Is it useful? Is it not useful? Is it coming from a place of love, or is it, is it something that's going to be judgmental or righteous? And now that's what really begins to change your character. But in order to do that, you have to have built that upon the concentration and the de-stressing. So this whole practice, you wouldn't even necessarily get to the mindful awareness part probably for 9 months to a year of training.
Wow. And that takes dedication.
And that takes dedication, yeah. And then The next stage is what I call insight.
Hmm.
And that is, there's a lot more to talk about with mindful awareness, because we can use that more almost as like our personal depth psychology, for transformation of emotional shadow and biases, overcoming bias and stuff like that, which is critical for leaders. But the insight is kind of what I was dropping into after about a year and a half, where you learn, your mind kind of goes beyond, you're able to turn inward and go beyond the rational thinking, even thinking about your thinking, and connect with the witness. And the witness is essentially your overarching awareness or your consciousness. So you recognize awareness itself as it resides or as it is you, and you begin to disidentify or detach from any egoic structures that say I am this or I am that, or emotional states that say I am anger or I am, jealousy. And you look at those and you say, I am not that. I'm experiencing that right now, but I'm not that. And when you begin to identify with and stabilize in this witnessing state, that's when you begin to also open up the direct perceiving capacity of your mind to just know things that you don't know intellectually, right? And so there's not a lot of information on how we know things, so I speculate. One of them is we get information from our heart mind, which has neurological processing and neurons and neurotransmitters in our heart. And so it's part of our brain. So we get information and we're able to hear it and actually interpret it. Also our biome, our little brain, right? There's neurological processing and neurotransmitters in our gut and our enteric nervous system. And so we're able to receive and actually take action on that information. You might call that instinct or intuition. And then there's this direct perception, which might be like trans-rational knowledge or information that just comes from outside of us or around us or from universal intelligence. And because you're open to receiving this or able to hear it, you just suddenly get these insights,
Right, the downloads.
Yeah, like the kosher record insights. You just get the downloads.
Yeah.
Or the uploads, if you will. You start to experience your life more as a hologram than a linear cause and effect relationship, which is very, very cool. And tapping into this aspect of your mind is where you get the intense flow states where time either compresses or speeds up. And what I've noticed is that once we train ourselves to go there, we can go there anytime we want. So flow becomes a skill, not something that just happens.
That you just could tap into at
any
time.
It's a skill. And anytime you want to go into flow because you need to perform at your peak or, do a podcast like this, or you're writing, you just go there. You do a few deep breaths, you quickly go through that process, and you access that state. There are stages beyond that, but they really go more in the realm of spiritual development and probably aren't something you want to talk about right here and now. But
and you've been doing this for, I think you said like 20 years at least.
I started basic training with Zen back in 85 actually.
Yeah. And even back then, it's been around for a long time, but meditation, as you know, it's definitely become more mainstream. And I'm curious, you talked about box breathing. If you could explain what box breathing is, because there's so many different types of breath work. I do kind of like the fire breath sometimes, but I know box breathing, if you could explain.
I do that every day too. And that's good for detoxification and also to train the muscles. Box breathing, let me put it this way. First, before we talk about box breathing, if someone is listening and never done any breath training, then it's really important to just start by becoming aware of the breath and beginning to deepen the inhale and the exhale without any holds, because box breathing it's a way of controlling through breath holds, which is not appropriate for everyone if they haven't developed the skills. And it's safe, but I'm just saying, like,
starts
a good idea with the baby steps to work on the musculature, to lengthen the breath, to practice breathing through your nostrils, again, it would take me 2 days to unpack all the whys and the science around it, but
Mm.
we want to breathe through our nostrils. We want to use all of our muscles. We want to breathe from the center of our chest cavity out in all directions, right?
Mm.
Most people breathe kind of vertically, and they generally breathe in their upper chest, and they use their neck and shoulders. We want to breathe from the center out, using our diaphragm, using our stomach, using our chest, using our back, getting a full, lung capacity. Full inhale, slowing it down, full exhale. Ultimately, we're looking for 6 breaths per minute, using that nice slow inhale, exhale to roughly a 5 count. Like, do that 6 times.
And it's only through the nose.
Just through the nose. And that will lead to optimum health and longevity, and a really, really clear, calm mind, and it'll de-stress your body. That practice alone is money. You don't need to do anything else. But what I've found, and what worked for me and works for all of us at Unbeatable Mind, is a practice called box breathing, which takes it down to 3 breaths per minute, because we have a hold after the inhale and the exhale. And so we'll do 5 count in, 5 count hold, 5 count out, 5 count hold. Hence the box pattern.
Mm-hmm.
Because we're now taking conscious control over our breathing and turning into a practice as opposed to a steady state that we just do during the day, then it serves to do a few things. One is it rewires your automatic breathing patterns, so that when after practicing this for 6 months or 9 months or so every day, then your natural breathing pattern, when you're not box breathing, which is the rest of the day, falls into generally that 5 to 6 breaths per minute, 5 count in, 5 count out through the nose, because you're practicing it. You probably, I've said this before on your podcast, but if you're not training yourself, then the world is training you, or somebody else is training you. So if you're not training your breath, then it's just getting trained by your emotions, which are all over the place, and by your thoughts, which are all over the place, because the breath is connected to thinking and emotions, right? And, the fact check for that is every breath pattern has a thought pattern, and every thought pattern has a breath pattern. Same thing with emotions. So by taking conscious control over training the breath, then we're also taking conscious control over training our mind and our emotional body. So box breathing then also gives us that secondary benefit that I was talking about of concentration, because we're now coordinating our breathing into a pattern that can become our concentration object or subject.
So you're going to focus on your breath when you're meditating.
Focus on the breath in that pattern, and to the exclusion of all else. So now what has happened is you've got all the benefits of breathing in that box pattern, which brings great stability to your mind. That's why the box has even sides. If you do an uneven side box, you're going to get a different energetic effect. So I don't recommend playing with that until you're more advanced. Like yogis who train for years might do a longer inhale, a longer hold. It's going to really energize them. But there's a warning sign that comes with that, because, and I say this with any type of really energetic breathing practice, like Kundalini yoga or Wim Hof, is you're moving a ton of energy, mental energy. And if you have, just like CrossFit, if you jump into CrossFit and you've got a dysfunctional pattern in your hip or your knee or your shoulders, you're toast, right?
Yeah.
You're going to break. And if you jump into an intense breathing practice like Wim Hof or Kundalini, and you've got a dysfunctional mental pattern, which most of the Western world does, then you're going to grease the groove of that pattern deeper and deeper until you spring a gasket. So you got to be very careful with anything beyond just really simple breath. And that's all you need. 99.9999% of the benefits come from those 2 simple practices that I talked about. Just simple breath awareness, 5 count in, 5 count out. We call that the tactical breath, which is what you want to be your steady state throughout the day. Unless you are in a workout, let's say, or you're speaking, then, it'll change things. Which is one of the reasons why when you do more of the practice, you tend to talk less, because you're more mindful, and you're also mindful that your breath is really important. And if you're talking all the time, you're not going to be able to get into that nice 5 count in, 5 count optimal breath.
That's interesting that you mentioned that, because I imagine I could tell that you're very calm when you're speaking. And I imagine that's because you're, like you said, you're taking in breaths and you're naturally just calm. And I think a lot of people that speak fast probably aren't getting in that natural flow of breathing, right?
Right, right.
That's
This
so fascinating.
practice has such enormous benefits for public speaking and doing, what you
Wow.
and I do, because in fact, there is also something you have to be careful about, because, and I've had to notice this, like you can also get addicted to the calmness. And someone might say, well, why is that bad? Well, because, there might be time to take action, or time you need to get mad or agitated. My wife is always
Right.
on me on that. I'm like, yeah, but it's no big deal. If it doesn't kill you, it's not going to hurt you. It's going to make you stronger. And she's like, no, you need to get mad. And I'm like, you're right. I've been doing box breathing for so long. I'm just super
That's
calm.
so funny. You're like, oh, it's no big
Yeah,
deal.
whatever.
That's so funny. Well, so that sounds amazing. So box breathing seems like something that, like you said, baby steps, but it's something
Right.
to do every day, that it becomes
Every
your
day.
practice every
Minimum
day.
20 minutes in the morning is what I recommend. And if
Wow.
that's too
Okay.
far, then just do 5 minutes. I can't
So let me
imagine
ask.
anyone who doesn't have 5 minutes.
Yeah, okay. I think we all have 5 minutes, but let me ask kind of a personal question, but I'm sure a lot of people are related to this. I have my whole morning routine, which I have a pretty solid morning routine, but I focus a lot on health, well-being, and body work per
Mm-hmm.
se. But my hardest thing is I have a hard time meditating. Let me just tell you.
Mm-hmm.
Number one, because when I get up, the first thing I want to do is move,
Mm-hmm.
because I kind of need to wake up my body. So it's a hard thing for me to wake up and then go back to bed per se, sit upright and
Mm-hmm.
meditate. What would you recommend for somebody that's kind of struggling? I know you said probably starting with the breathing, and
Mm-hmm.
then that will lead you into the meditation, but what's your recommendation, just to, because I want to say to you right now, I'm going to commit, and I'm going to do it
Mm-hmm.
every day going forward. If I could say that to you, that'd be amazing.
Yeah.
But
I,
let's,
I
what
do
do
have a
you
recommendation.
recommend?
First of all, you should move before, because we want to get the energy out, because otherwise you're just going to be bottled up, and it's going to show up in mental patterns and emotional patterns when you sit down to meditate. So do your movement, do your somatic stuff, jump, do your jumping jacks, go for a run or a walk, whatever it is that you do it. But at the end of that, carve out time to do some box breathing, right? And so what that will do is de-stress you from the workout. It'll integrate. You'll have this amazing benefit from that. And then, so if you can only afford, let's say 10 minutes at the end of a workout, that's your cool down. Then instead of just doing nothing while you cool down or doing a little stretching, get on a bench or sit on the edge of a chair and just practice this box breathing we just talked about. 5 count in, 5 count hold, 5 count out, 5 count hold. And when you get done with it, just sit and don't do anything. Don't try not to think. Don't try to think. Don't try to control your breathing. Don't try to not control your breathing.
Mm-hmm.
Just sit. Just sit and see what comes up.
And that's
Because
the meditation.
that's the meditation, because you've gone and you burned off the energy physically, and now you've de-stressed yourself with the breath, and you've energized yourself with life force and breath. See, every breath you take, you're drawing in consciousness, life force, energy, chi, and oxygen. And you're calming your mind down, and you're calming your emotions down. So, you imagine like your witness or your spiritual self is like a mountain, and thoughts and emotions are like clouds that are going by. And the box breathing is like a strong wind that comes and blows all the clouds away. So then what's left is just the mountain, just sitting.
Mm.
And that's meditation. And it doesn't matter if a thought comes up, great. Don't jump on it and ride it like a stallion. Just let it go. You know what I mean? Let it go. And then just wait and sit. People try to complexify meditation. It really is the practice of getting comfortable with utter stillness, and then turning your awareness around from external focus to internal focus to connect with your true nature that we talked about earlier.
Mm-hmm.
That witnessing, universal aspect of our ever-present beingness. Meditation is finding that. but if you search for it too hard, it'll be very elusive. So people have to lighten the grip they have with meditation. They have to stop
Like the
trying.
idea of what it
Yeah,
is
it's
or what it
more
should
about
be.
just sitting and being your true self, getting out of your own way than it is striving for something. People turn meditation into like a workout. They have to strive, and they track all their hours and their time.
Hmm.
I'm thinking that you could get a black belt in meditation, and that's completely missing the point. We just need to literally get out of our own way and recognize our true nature.
That's in everything.
Yeah,
But that's
true.
step for
Right.
meditation, most definitely. Well, let's go. I could go on, we could probably go on and on about breath work and meditation, but let's now lead it into how that really got you into becoming a SEAL because of your practice. And I would love if you could share how you got into, number one, being accepted into the SEAL and then doing Bud's training. And I personally know about Hell Week. I know how intense it is. I know a few SEALs personally, and they've shared the whole experience. And so for those that don't know, obviously it takes a lot of mental work more than the physical. So your training, your practice is really what strengthened you to get there. So I'd love if you could share that.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that. Yeah, Bud's definitely is largely physical or mental, but also emotional. I think most people who quit, it's an emotional moment. Thoughts and emotions are so closely tied. They're just two sides of the same coin. For me, physically, I was definitely solid, right? I was an elite athlete, and I was a black belt in karate by the time I went to Bud's. But so was everybody else, Erica, right? You don't show up at SEAL training unless you're a stud, right? So we had 185 studs in my class. We had 19 who graduated. And I graduated number one, but also my entire
Wow.
boat crew graduated with me. So this is part of the Zen practice. That's never happened before that I'm aware of. I don't think it's ever happened since, because statistically it's ridiculous, like 1 in a million chance that an entire boat crew that's been together since the first phase will graduate together. So why did that happen? Well, I went the Zen practice and working with Nakamura, and then adding to it some visualization work that I really kind of like just innovated, but I started from my swim team coach in college taught me to visualize my event. So there's classic sports visualization for performance. And because I had a pretty cool experience with it, I really trusted visualization to be something that made an impact. That experience, I'll relate real quick. So my coach, Bob Benson, asked me to visualize my event, which was 200-meter breaststroke, using a stopwatch, in my mind. And, I started to do this, and it was ridiculously hard. I literally would close my eyes. I'd hear the gun go off. I'd jump off the blocks into the water, and I'd go about 2 strokes before I started thinking about, my homework or my girlfriend. I was off, right? And I told him, I said, this is hard. I can't do this. And he said, just stick with it, Mark. Trust me. This is something that will really improve your swimming. So I did, and I stuck with it. And it slowly, incrementally got a little bit better, but it took me a long time. This is the thing with meditation and visualization work. Like, people don't really have the patience for it. Fortunately, I grew up pre-digital devices and social
Yes.
media, and didn't have much
Dedicated to
else to do.
space.
You know what I mean? So there I was. I think I'll practice my visualization. And so 9 months into it, I was able to complete the entire 8 lengths in my mind. And when I touch the pad and I look up into my mental virtual scoreboard, I was getting a time that was like 3 seconds faster than I'd ever swum in the water. And then, so that was, I think, all my sophomore year. And then junior fall, I got into that overseas study program I mentioned earlier, and I went to London. So I wasn't swimming that year. I was kind of out of it. Came back in the spring, and I took up a different sport. I took up rowing. But I ran into the swim coach, and he invited me to the championship event, which was the last. He's like, hey, I could still consider you part of the team. Why don't you come get in the water? And I said, oh, okay. Didn't really want to, of course, but I couldn't let him down. So there I was on the block. The gun goes off. I jump in the water. I haven't been in the pool for a year and a half, and I start stroking, and I had this sensation that I'd been here before. And when I touched the pad, the timer, I got that time that I had visualized every night, for months. Crazy.
Wow.
So anyways, now fast forward to, um, I had all these insights sitting on the bench, and I decide I'm meant to be a warrior. And then I find that SEAL poster and I go talk to the recruiters. They try to dissuade me. They say, you got a better chance of becoming an astronaut than a SEAL.
Oh
You
my
don't want to be
gosh.
one of those crazy people anyways, they're a bunch of maniacs. I said, that sounds exactly like me. I'm going to do this. And so like I said, I finally got in, one of two people that year selected to go to officer candidate school because I wanted to be an officer. So I had an MBA and I figured, well, I might as well be an officer. So I was still about 2 years out at that point because it takes a while. You don't just like show up at BUD/S, you don't just parachute into BUD/S and start training.
Right.
So I started I started adding visualization to my morning practice. So every morning I would get up and just like you, I had to work out. I went for a run. I did some PT, push-ups, sit-ups, stuff that they needed you to do for the SEAL screening test. And then I had a little Zen bench. I would sit on my Zen bench and I would do 20 minutes of practice. So that practice was the box breathing practice. And I just did it. And then I would turn it into like a mindfulness toward the end. And then at the end, very end of the 20 minutes when my timer went off, I would visualize. So what I did is I turned becoming a SEAL like into a sport. I said, I'm gonna pretend that this thing that I'm attempting is like a sport. And I'm gonna visualize myself going through Navy SEAL training as best I can. So I didn't have a lot of mental representation of what that looked like, except for the recruiting video, which I watched about 10 times. Then I mentally inserted myself into the recruiting video. And so I now call this a future me visualization, which has aspects of doing things, but that's the least important part of it. But the most important part is the becoming aspect.
I love
so
that.
I had this sense of who I needed to be, what type of person I needed to be to really crush BUD/S. And that was, as you mentioned earlier, it was well beyond the physical. I really didn't worry about that part. Like physically, I knew I could make it. And but what I needed to be was a good leader. I needed to be an exceptional teammate because I knew that they didn't call it the SEAL teams they called it the SEAL teams for a reason. I needed to be calm. I needed to make good decisions under pressure because that's all about pressure because they're simulating combat there. So I needed to be all these things. And so I began to visualize myself as those things, as that type of person under pressure, leading my team, with this SEAL instructors throwing everything they could at me. So I practiced this every day, just on pure faith, right? Now, something pretty cool happened. And for some reason, 9 months keeps coming back in my life as kind of an inflection point for when coolness happens when you practice something this long or this intently. So about 9 months after adding that visualization practice, I had this profound sensation that I was a Navy SEAL, that I had already accomplished it. And about a week after that sensation, that sense of certainty came over me. So now I wasn't hoping to be a Navy SEAL. Like I knew I was going to be a Navy SEAL. The recruiter called me and said, Mark, congratulations. You got the billet. You're one of two that were selected.
Amazing.
I hadn't gotten in until this point. I was just practicing on blind faith,
Wow.
That's pretty cool, isn't it?
Oh,
and
it's so
then
amazing.
When I showed up at SEAL training, 6 months later, because I had to finish up everything and then go to officer candidate school for 4 months. And then I finally got to BUD/S. Even that's an interesting story too, because I got to BUD/S and they had, my order said that I was supposed to go into class 171 and they weren't starting for like another 8 or 9 weeks. And my intuition, I just got this wickedly strong hit that that's not my class, that I was supposed to class up with 170, which was starting on Monday. And this was a Friday.
Wow.
So I started talking. I said, I think I'm I need to go into class 170. How do I get into class 170? And they're all looking at me like, you can't do that. Your orders are 171. But I was persistent. So finally I got someone say, well, you need to go down to the pool where Lieutenant May is training class 170 to prep them to start on Monday. And just talk to him. I mean, maybe he can do something. So I jogged my way over to the pool, and there's class 170, all 184 dudes. And then Lieutenant May was on this high diving board, lording over his minions. And this guy was classic Navy SEAL, 6 foot 6'3", blonde hair, blue eyes, super tan, fit as you can imagine, steely eyes that looked right through you. And I could feel it when he gazed down at me, and he's just looking at me with utter contempt, but that
He's
it
like, oh
really
my.
wasn't. That's what I was feeling. It was like, oh my God. He just looked at me. He goes, "What can we do for you, Enzyme?" Which is his, nickname for ensign. And I said, "Lieutenant May, I'm Ensign Divine, and I'm in class 171, but I like to class up with 170. That's about all I could think about saying." He looked at me and he goes, "Well, that's not normal." And I said, "No, sir, but I think I need to be in this class."
Wow.
And he said, "Okay, well, demonstrate that you can handle at least an underwater swim." Right now, I just swim 50 meters underwater for us. So all the class kind of parted, and I was in my utility pants and shirt and boots. And I started to take my boots off. He goes, no.
With boots?
You go in like that.
What? Okay.
And so I said, okay. So I take a few deep breaths, steeled myself, and I jumped in and started pulling like mad. The boots were useless, I just literally had to keep my, hips as high as possible. But I was a breaststroker, right?
Huh.
And so I literally made it 50 meters, pulled myself out of the pool, and Lieutenant May said, he goes, "Come see me in my office in a half hour." And he let me into the class. Wow. How cool is that? So everything,
that's amazing.
When things are easy and the obstacles fall away, then you're in the right place, doing the right thing. You're on, you're fulfilling your calling. When things are hard and they feel sticky and lots of obstacles pop up and you're being manipulated or used, then you're not doing the right thing probably, right?
Right. And it seems like that has been your path when you started your meditation practice, that everything you were almost like positioned to go this route.
Right.
Like something in you is like, oh, this feels right.
That's
so
right.
If you could kind of go into the BUDS training, because you spoke about, and as you mentioned, teamwork is critical, especially obviously in SEALs. So, and you teach leadership. So part of leadership is the teamwork part. So if you could touch a little bit on the teamwork aspect and why that was so, as you said, your whole team went forward to become SEALs, and that's not common at all.
So I don't know how I kind of picked this up, but my sense was that leadership is teamwork. Like you could say you lead yourself, but there's no one to lead. You just do yourself as best you can, right? Leadership is all about team. And when you have that attitude that you're there to serve the team, it's all about the team, then your notion of what it means to be a leader shifts. You don't look at it as a position. In fact, those are the worst kind of leaders. And we had one in our class who was a positional leader, and he was horrific. So nobody followed him. They followed the second in command, who was a senior enlisted former EOD guy who was just awesome. So he was the de facto leader. And I was in my boat crew. I showed up, and I didn't make it about me because I knew it was about them. It was about the team. And so I didn't put myself above them. I didn't put myself as the positional leader. I said, basically, I'm here to help you guys get through this training. Amazing. And together we're going to do this. So that was one aspect of it. Is I really had my, we call it focus on others all the time. So, and I taught them that first, the team comes first. So when it comes to gear, you take care of the team gear. If we could take care of the team's gear, whether it was our little boats and our paddles or whatever, then that gear will take care of us. And then you take care of your teammates' gear. So we all had a swim buddy. So I would take care of my swim buddy's gear, make sure it was all squared away, and he would take care of mine. And so we had this kind of hierarchy. First, take care of the team. It's about the mission. Then you take care of your teammate. And then if your teammate's squared away, you turn your attention to find another teammate, who needs some help, right? And this way, everyone's got each other's back. And you always know your gear is squared away because, 2 or 3 people have checked it for you. And then, of course, you check it. Especially in high-risk environments, you can imagine how important the gear is and taking care of that and whatnot. So then every evolution, and we called every event an evolution because I think the SEALs, they knew that at some level that, that these events were more than just events. They were evolving our character, and they were meant to evolve the character of the individuals and the teams. And if you didn't have the character to make it, or you couldn't evolve, then you were generally off the team. And that was usually through an injury or a quit, or they would find a way to orchestrate something like that because they didn't want you on the team because you weren't a good teammate. That's one of the most underrated aspects of SEAL training is people think it's really individual effort. It's not. It is, but it's not.
Right.
And the instructors are there not just to train you, but to select their next set of teammates who they're going to go to combat with. And so they're really looking first and foremost for your qualities as a team player, which will reflect your qualities as a leader, right? So if you go in there thinking, well, your leadership was to be captain of the football team and you were the all-star, you're usually the first person to either quit or to get forced out because it's ego. And I set my ego aside. I call it checking it at the door, and really focused on the team. And then the team rewarded me for that because they gave me a lot of energy in return. They took care of my gear. They supported me when I was suffering and having my moments. And we all were just right there for each other. It was incredible, actually. So we actually went through Hell Week and secured several hours early. So that was like a huge trust factor. Hell Week was for us 7 weeks into the whole 9 months of training. And because we had navigated that and secured early, and we got to take a long shower and go back out on the beach in dry clothes, watching everyone else get the shit kicked out of them.
That's amazing.
And everyone was like, oh my God, we've got this. You know, if we can do that, then we can do this entire thing just like that. So like we could unpack this quite a bit. So a lot of the Zen training came in for me where I was calm and I taught them how to be calm. Part of that was just through modeling, right? So much of how we affect others as a leader is just how we show up. Right? If we show up and we're freaking out and we're all out of control, then our team is going to freak out and be out of control.
Very true.
Right?
Yeah.
So because of the breathing and the meditation practice, when I showed up, I was super calm. And I said, I was also, because of my martial arts training and the humility that I was modeled through Nakamura, I recognized that I didn't have all the answers. And I could humbly admit that I wasn't perfect and that I didn't know what to do, but I knew that we needed to do something. And so let's choose the first most best action that we could think and then just do it and see how it goes. And then we're going to get some feedback and then we can move on to the next best action that we can think of and do that. And in this way, we just took one small action at a time, trying to consider as a team, what's the best action that we can take right now without getting into a lot of dialogue and without having to do a perfect plan. Just basically using our intuition, or whoever had the most spontaneous thing that sounded right, we would do it. And so in this way, we were responding a lot quicker than other teams to the tasks and to the chaos situations, because we were being more intuitive and spontaneous. And I was allowing like even the most junior guy to be like, hey, I think we should do this. And I'd be like, yeah, that sounds good. Let's go. You know what I mean? So
that's amazing. That is so valuable because I imagine a lot of people that go into SEAL training, they are totally like focused on, oh, I could do this. I'm a tough guy. And I'm going to do this. Right.
That's right.
They're focused on themselves. And then you checked your humility and you were humble enough to listen to somebody else's idea opposed to your ego saying like, oh, I could do this alone. I don't need you, which I'm imagining that came across through a lot of people in the training. And so of course I want to make sure we touch on so much. I have so much to talk to you about, but the mental toughness especially. So that is really the key thing in being a SEAL or even getting through Hell Week is that mental toughness, because they rip you down to pieces and they play on your mind because they know you're going through this stage and they're going to play on it to see if you could handle it past that point. So I've heard you talk about, there's, I believe you call it the
Big Four skills.
The Big Four. So what is this for developing mental toughness?
The master skill, by the way, is a focus on others. So that's like the fifth skill. But the Big Four, interestingly enough, are closely related to the practices that we talked earlier. We use the same skills, but we use them in a different structure, different way. because now we're under pressure. So it's one thing to be sitting in your bedroom, sitting on a bench, practicing. And it's another thing to have freaking bullets flying over your head and smoke grenades going off and people screaming at you and water being sprayed in your face. And you
and remaining calm.
Remaining calm. But it's entirely possible, because what you realize when you do the practices of meditation, concentration, box breathing, is that you truly actually have zero control over anything that happens outside your own skin, but you have total control over everything that happens inside your skin. So that's the first kind of insight from mental toughness, is don't try to control, just expect that you're going to, things are going to be out of control out there. So you can control what's going on in here in spite of what's going on out there. And you do that through the breath training, and through, in the moment when the pressure hits, when the crisis hits, you come back to that tactical breath. 5 count in, 5 count out, 5 count in. And of course, if you practice it like I've been suggesting, and you've been doing it now for a year or two, then it's going to happen automatically, and you're going to be nice and calm. And you're going to be able to slow time down and look around and be like, okay, this is real, right? Fortunately, it's not combat. The SEAL instructors can't kill me legally. So what they're trying to do is to get me out of control. Well, they can't do that either, because I'm in control of my breath now. And now that I'm in control of my breath, I got to look at the quality of my thoughts. Oh, they're starting to race, and they're starting to be a little fear creeping in. So let me interdict that and do what I call feeding the courage wolf. So I interdict any fear or any negative self-talk in myself and my teammates by shifting it to something positive and productive. And so we had mantras. One of our mantras, which was mine, but my team started using it, was, we're feeling good, we're looking good, ought to be in Hollywood. We're feeling good, looking good, ought to be in Hollywood, right? Or we got this, easy day, hoo-yah, which is hoo-yah is the Navy SEAL shout for kick ass. We're going to kick ass. So we would be saying that to ourselves, either internally or together as a team, and then shifting our focus to what it is we can do right now to mitigate the crisis, or to mitigate, or to get off the X, is what you say in a combat situation. And it might be just to calm down and just to crawl out of the danger zone, or to get to the surf zone and get wet and sandy like they're telling us, and just not freak out, but just go and do the task. Just that one task. And that brings me to the third skill, is imagery. So imagery under pressure is where you basically have to come back to that image that you had been practicing of you accomplishing your, worthy mission in life. And my mission at that point in time was to graduate Navy SEAL training. And so I have the image that I'm graduating Navy SEAL training. I'm already a Navy SEAL. I've won it in my mind before I step foot in this mock battlefield. So they're going to either have to kill me, right, to get me out of here, or I'm going to have to lose a limb or something like that, because I'm not leaving this thing, because I can already see myself winning. I can already see myself on graduation day. I know it's possible because I've practiced it in my mind first. So we come back and we touch bases with that, and it helps us remember why we're there. We remember Simon Sinek's beautiful book, It All Starts with Why. So
the why, yeah.
Why are you at SEAL training? People quit because in those moments of despair, they forget why they're there, or they're there for the wrong reasons. And in our training at SEALFit, one of my companies is called SEALFit. We make sure that the SEAL candidates who come through our training are clear on their why. And anyone who wants to do it just to be a badass, play whack-a-mole, and go kill some terrorists, I tell them, that's not a good why, right?
No.
You're not going to make it. You're not going to make it with that why. You need a stronger why, and that why is tied to a vision of who you are and what impact you're going to have in the world around service, usually. So when you can connect with that image and that sense of why you're doing something under extreme pressure, then that's where motivation comes from, right? You have to create the motivation. It's not something that you just carry in with you, because when the crisis hit, that just goes out the window, right? So you create your own motivation by checking in with your why and tapping into that vision, and that fuels you up. And then you feed it even more courage with a positive mantra. I got this, easy day. They'd have to kill me to get me out of here. And you say it thousands of times to yourself, and that just powers you up, fuels you, and you're breathing deeply, right? Those are the first three skills. And the fourth one I've kind of already alluded to, it's micro goals. Like, don't,
Mm-hmm.
at the start of Hell Week on Sunday, you're not thinking about Friday. If you're going to quit, because you got 6 days nonstop round the clock
Yeah.
training with no sleep, and it's overwhelming. So what you do is you just think about what I'm doing right now. What are they asking for me to do in this evolution? Oh, well, I got to carry this log up the berm. I got to do a lot more than that, but that's about as far as I can think right now. So I'm just going to carry this log up the berm with my team, and then once I get to the top of the berm, I'll worry about what comes next. And so you set these micro goals and then you just link them together. And then what happens is you might have had this massive chunking target, like 6 days, but you say, okay, all I'm going to do is make it to sunset. Boom. Suddenly sunset's there. And you go, great. Okay, I got to win. So you notch your belt. Okay, now I'm not going to quit. I'm not going to do anything until sunrise, because the worst part of training is like at 4 a.m. You've been up all night. Now it's like you've been up for 2 or 3 nights and it's 4 a.m. and you're miserable and freezing. You haven't slept and you have that dark night of the soul moment, and people quit then all the time, like in either the second night or the third night, right before sunrise. But if you could just hold up to sunrise, and all of a sudden that sun comes up and you're like, oh my gosh, you feel the warmth in your face and you've made it another night and now you're into the day, it's extremely motivating. Boom, you get a jolt of energy. So you never quit or make any decision like that at night. So you say, okay, all I'm going to do is make it to the next sunrise, and then we'll see how it goes. And once you're there, you're like, oh, that's not so bad. Then I'm just going to make it to lunch, right?
Yeah.
And I'll get a break. So you chunk these micro goals, and that's such a valuable skill for all leaders.
Oh my gosh, it's so valuable. I've actually heard this from a couple SEALs I know. That was the one thing that stuck out the most to me, was these small little wins. Celebrate your small wins, like you said, because if you look at the big picture, it's overwhelming, right? It's too much. Right. And especially in the 7-day hell week, 7-day hell week, forget it. But if you look at it, these little, and that goes to accomplishing anything in life. If you look at all the things on your to-do list, it will be overwhelming and you'll want to quit. But it's just those small little wins. I love that. That's such a great thing to do, really anything in your life, and that's any training.
It's great for your attitude, because let's say you ended up chunking a huge project, like launching a new product or a business, and you're like, oh my gosh, there's like 500 things that need to happen, but you're just focusing on one at a time, right? Not the 500. By the time you get to 100, you've got so much momentum and motivation because of all those small wins that you can't fail. Something big would have to happen to fail, right? Because you've just already developed so much confidence in those small wins. And so, it's like you can eat an elephant one bite at a time. Navy SEALs kick ass in their missions one micro goal at a time. And what's neat about that is then the challenges are a little bit smaller. I mean, you're going to have big challenges, but when you take it one evolution or one phase or one goal at a time, if something goes wrong, it doesn't kill the whole mission. It's just something that went wrong with that phase. And now you got to find a way or make a way around it.
Absolutely. Yes. I love that. Like, how are you going to eat it? How do you eat an elephant? One bite, small little bite at a time. Exactly. Well, I would love if you could touch on what is the Unbeatable Mind program? Because actually, I believe you started SEALFit first, which became a popular training for men to take themselves to actually go into the SEAL training. So you started that, and then you started the Unbeatable Mind, which a lot of people, anybody could enter the Unbeatable Mind program. I know SEALFit's a little bit more.
It's a little bit harder. Yeah. SEALFit is a physical training program. We have, intense crucible events, and anybody can do it, but it's not for everybody. The early days of SEALFit, I was running 30-day immersion academies, and the students would live with me. I had a training center in downtown Encinitas. I had room for like 12 to 15 students. And we would feed them, and they would live on site, and we trained from 0 dark 30 to in the morning to dark 100 at night, you know what I mean, and around the clock for 30 days. They had one Sunday off. And we taught leadership, team building, self-defense, mental toughness, emotional awareness, and all the physical skills, not just to prepare for SEAL training, but to prepare for combat. And as you can imagine, I was innovating all this stuff. Incredibly creative period in my life. I ran these things for about 3 years before I just couldn't scale it any longer. And I was getting burnout. So we chunked it out into smaller events. But those were extraordinary. It's kind of like an American Shaolin Academy, right? Where we were training true warrior, leader, monk athletes. The physical training became what we call the SEALFit operator workouts, which a lot of military operators use to this day. And they're just extraordinary training. It's incredible. Strength, stamina, work capacity, durability, endurance, and mental toughness, all trained in one workout. We still offer those at SEALFit.com. And then the durability and a lot of the practices that we've talked about here became warrior yoga. I had to change the name to Kokoro yoga, so someone had a trademark on that. But Kokoro yoga, Kokoro means heart and mind merged in action. So Kokoro yoga became another program. SEALFit has a best-selling book, and there's a program. Kokoro yoga is another book that Macmillan asked me to write on that program, and we have an online course around that. And then all the leadership and team building stuff, and how do you master yourself as a lifelong practice, and how do you serve in a way that's unique to your calling? All of that I developed during these academies, at least the early aspects of it. And I called that Unbeatable Mind. And I had a lot of people starting to come to me and say, hey, Mark, this Unbeatable Mind stuff is wickedly valuable. And can I just train that? Because I've got my own fitness program and I already do yoga. And I said, oh, well, it's a good idea. So I wrote a book called Unbeatable Mind. I self-published that. And I put together the first online training program, which was a year-long program called the Unbeatable Mind Foundations course, and launched that in 2011. And then that took off because a lot more people, I was able to, serve a lot more people. And it's, men and women of all ages, all walks of life, all disciplines. And so that was cool. I was like, I'm onto something. So I've been really focusing on evolving that program. And it's pretty extraordinary. So I consider it an integrated vertical development program, which to distinguish vertical from horizontal development as a leader, you can go take a skills class, or most leadership development classes fall into this horizontal development. It's going to teach you strategy or execution of, how to bring a vision to your team, or how to, establish values and culture, or communication, or something like that. Whereas vertical development is the type of development that changes who you are as a person. It fundamentally transforms you into a new person, where you have a greater sense of awareness, a greater perspective on things. You evolve up the scale of consciousness. And those conscious stages have been developed and mapped by transpersonal psychology, by integral theory, spiral dynamics. And so we have our own map we call the 5 plateaus, where we're trying to, actively evolve the leader, or leaders are actively evolving themselves up to have this world-centric integrated perspective, and to have the capacity to take perspectives and make new perspectives on every human being that they come into contact with based upon their level of development. So it takes great awareness. And so the 2 overarching aspects of this vertical development program are mastery of the self, to tap into your greatest potential and to be able to connect at a really deep level with your teammates and your family, of course. And then service in a way that's in alignment with your calling and is world-centric, meaning it's going to, even if it's just really local, or even if you're just serving one person, it'll have a positive impact on humanity in the way
like
you
ripple effect.
Right, in the ripple effect. So it's beyond the ego, it's beyond even ethnocentrism, and it's world-centric, which is an aspect of an integrated whole person, right? They have great care, concern, and compassion for all humanity and all sentient beings and Mother Earth. So we want our Unbeatable Mind students to have that perspective, because as you're well aware, and so are all the listeners, we don't have that in the world, and it's a freaking nightmare, right? There's so much fighting and so much violence, and we keep investing in this violence, and there's so much negativity, and there's not a single leader or institution that's going to solve it. And so everyone every human now, it's up to us to solve it.
It's our
But
responsibility.
it's our responsibility, right?
Mm-hmm.
But we can't do it if we're stuck in ego. We can't do it if we're, just training to look good on the beach or to dominate in the streets. We have to evolve ourselves. And through evolving ourselves, then we're evolving consciousness, because we're going to show up differently, and other people are going to then experience that energy and that mindset.
Mm-hmm.
And then they're going to be infected with your positivity and affected by how you show up. And then they're going to start evolving or be led to, either your podcast or my podcast or Unbeatable Mind, or some way that's going to spark their growth.
Absolutely.
That's what Unbeatable Mind is. Yeah.
It's
So it's a training program. We have a certified coaching program. We have about 400 certified coaching. Our goal is 10,000, and 10,000 coaches so that we can impact 100 million people.
Wow.
2045.
And women could do this too. It's not just exclusive to men.
No.
It sounds
in fact, we really want more women to do it. And
all right, I'm in it.
Yeah, you should do it.
Sounds amazing. I mean, it sounds remarkable, and it really touches on that deep mastery of self and consciousness. And again, it starts with us. That's the only way we could heal this world or create this ripple effect and change our surroundings.
Gandhi had it right. Be the change you want to see in the world.
There you go. Exactly. So how do you feel that for us to evolve or to really become our best self, we need to endure challenges, that we need to constantly overcome challenges or be put in challenges to then, evolve?
Absolutely. I mean, it's just a crucible effect. If you deny challenge in your life or you run away from it, then you're going to get it anyways. But it's going to be ugly, right? It's going to be some debilitating thing or an accident. And so I like to say, go to the challenge before the challenge comes to you, because we grow through challenge. Human beings thrive in challenge. When we get comfortable with the discomfort, we learn to embrace the suck. These are Navy SEAL terms,
right?
That's when we really start to spark the growth, because we then turn what was uncommon into common, right? So we end up desensitizing ourselves to things that debilitate most other people. And that's how you grow, right? And that's how you grow your perspective. That's how you grow your capacity to handle stress. And that's how you grow your ability to deal with uncomfortable people, right? And like what's happening in our whole society with cancel culture and microaggression is like the opposite of this, right? It's like, how do people grow if they can't even have an uncomfortable conversation because they're going to be offended? They can't. So everyone's basically locking themselves in mediocrity who has that mindset.
Horrible.
Not good. And someone might slay me on social media for saying that, but
but it's not
stand by it.
Yeah. Stand right by you. Absolutely. It's ridiculous, but that's another topic, right?
It is.
Yeah. And obviously I've heard the term embracing the suck. And so it's getting somewhat, if you could say, comfortable with the uncomfortable so that you could surpass, because I think it was David Goggins that said this, or maybe it's a SEAL saying that we are our body will quit. How do you say it? Our body will quit
40% more.
Yeah. That our mind has, it's fascinating.
Yeah. It's probably more than that, but that's kind of a fun, everyone loves to have a statistic or a number.
Right.
But we have vast potential, as human beings.
And you're proving it. You through the work you've done with yourself and what you've been able to master in yourself, you were able to take your place to places that many couldn't. And I'm curious, do they do any form of meditation now in SEAL training?
They're starting to. They're using a lot of the, they have a mental toughness mentor who's a former SEAL Team 6 retired Master Chief. He's a big fan of Unbeatable Mind, and he recommends the books. And
Amazing.
So they're starting to bring this in, but they're also doing a study of best practices for all these other different types of, practices like mindfulness and whatnot. So they're starting to bring it into buds. It's ironic because, while the command dithers, these instructors are already doing this stuff and the command doesn't even know it. So they're already teaching the visualization before every evolution. They're already teaching box breathing. This is the way SEALs work. If they know something works, they just do it. and they don't wait around for permission. So it's already happening. And this pararescue is actually using Unbeatable Mind by name. We have one of our coaches who goes and lives with the pararescue Air Force special ops guys for 4 days and teaches them box breathing and visualization, mainly focusing on the big 4 skills that we talked about.
Great.
Box breathing, positive mental dialogue, visualization, and micro goals.
Wow.
So it's crazy that they haven't done that, because you think like warrior traditions since time immemorial. Think about the Zen, the Zen warrior, right? The samurai or the Spartan, they train their body, mind, and spirit.
Absolutely.
It's
all
the
in
modern
one.
warrior has gotten away from that. And so it's really nice to see it come back. And that was part of my mission with SEALFit.
That's amazing. Well, I could go on and on. I'm taking up a lot of your time. So this is
I've got a
just
call in 9 minutes, so we can't go on much longer.
So just in closure, if you were to leave one piece of advice for everybody right now, what would it be?
Calm down, right? Everyone's wigging out. Just breathe deeply and recognize that everything outside of you can't control, so let it go. And then start to declutter and simplify your life. Get off social media or radically limit your access. Stop listening to the news. I haven't had a TV in my house in 25 years. I don't read or listen to the news. I scan headlines and I play opposite day. Say whatever the headline says, the truth is probably exactly the opposite, right? So don't trust the news, because it's all full of bias and lies and manipulation. And when you start to, and also start saying no to commitments that you shouldn't be taking on, and suddenly life just gets a lot simpler. And then you start to really appreciate the silence and time in nature and, the breath practices. And then guess what? It has a profound effect on your peace of mind and your contentment. And then you're off to the races in terms of your self-mastery.
It's amazing. Well, Mark, I literally want to look into your face and say, I commit to meditating and my breath practice. So, I mean, this has literally pumped me up to take control of that, because I've mastered myself in lots of ways, but the meditation is something I'm not continuing.
Just do box breathing. And then when you're done, just don't do anything. Just enjoy being Erica for a few moments.
That's nice. Yeah, I like that. That sounds simple.
Thank
you so much, Mark. This has been such an honor. This is such good stuff. I'm so thankful for your time.
Thank you so much, Erica. It's been awesome.